Morning, all. All right, so we're going to talk about the Vancouver Canucks. I had really hoped that I would not be talking about the Vancouver Canucks after Game 7 last night. But I knew going into Game 7, they didn't have Brock Besser, they didn't have Thatcher Demko, and I've seen people saying, well, who cares? Shilovs has been really great. Yes, but Demko's a finalist for the Vezina, and I just feel like if he'd been in there, who knows, right? The Canucks play really well in front of Demko. But that being said, the better team won last night. I did see some comments about how can he wear an Oilers jersey? That's just so stupid. He's not a real Canuck fan. Well, that's where things get tricky. This is a hockey channel, so while I'm a Canuck fan, I am a I run a hockey channel where I do videos for every single team. So if you're going to compare my channel and what I do to somebody who just covers the Vancouver Canucks and only talks about the Vancouver Canucks, it's disingenuous at best, and it's deceptive at worst. Because when the game's done, I have to put aside how I feel emotionally about the game as best I can and stand in front of the camera and say, here's what happened, here's how I saw it, and I'm wearing the jersey of the winning team because that's how I've done it for years. The only time that I didn't was during the Stanley Cup final between Boston and St. Louis, and that was 5 years ago. And it taught me, you know what? Nope, never, ever, ever wear the jersey of the losing team. Even during the regular season, the jerseys I wear for reviews are always the winning team jerseys. So that being said, I don't think people that complain in the reviews are going to necessarily watch this video because I've mentioned this in news videos and people still complain. How can he? How can he? How dare he? How dare he's not a real fan. No, a real fan can sometimes be a realist and realize, hey, what's done is done, and you sort of shake the hand of the victor and go, better luck next time, right? Which reminds me of Happy Gilmore. Anytime it's better luck next year. If you hear me say that, I hear the coach from Happy Gilmore before Happy, tools him, gets right in there. Anyways, for the Vancouver Canucks, it has been an really, really strong season overall. They had a great first half, came back to earth a bit in the second half, and then in the playoffs, they somehow escaped that series against Nashville, even though in some of those games they were struggling to get shots. And they took Edmonton all the way to 7, even though I didn't think Vancouver played their best hockey. So I do think there's a lot of potential here, and I think, yeah, this team could go far. The only reason that I say I don't believe this team will win in my lifetime is because, as I said in the review last night, I think that's the 26th time I've watched them get eliminated in the playoffs. That's not even including the seasons they don't make the playoffs. Now, going back to 2019, 2020, and I'm going back this far because before this season, it's the last time the Canucks made the playoffs. 36, 27, and 6 record, 78 points. Now, that regular season at the time of the pause, the Canucks were going in the wrong direction. Markstrom had been hurt, and it wasn't going well with Markstrom out. But then the pause took place. We get back for the bubble playoffs, and the Canucks did pretty well. They got past Minnesota in the qualifying round. They got past St. Louis in the first round, and they took Vegas to 7 games. But Vegas was the better team, and Vegas won that one in 7. But the goaltending definitely gave Vegas fits in that series. It was a lot of fun. First Markstrom, and then Demko. Then 2020-21, the great disappointment. But in between the 2020 playoffs and the start of the 2020-2021 season, there was a lot of talk about how management wasn't talking to players. There were players that were allowed to just leave, Toffoli being the most prominent one, where he just left and they made no offer to keep him. So the Canucks had a rough year. They finished 23, 29, and 4, 50 points, and no playoffs. And this is where upheaval begins in this organization. 2021, 2022, they finished 40, 30, and 12, 92 points. Not a bad finish overall, but they started the season 8, 15, and 2 under Travis Green. He's replaced by Bruce Boudreau, who almost got the Canucks into the playoffs. They were 32, 15, and 10 under Bruce Boudreau. So no playoffs, but definitely an encouraging run under Bruce Boudreau, which 2022-2023 meant we had some optimism headed into that season. They finished 38, 37, and 7, 83 points. So they dropped by 9 points from the season before, and Bruce Boudreau would be fired. Now, to this day, I still say they waited way too long to fire Boudreau because we all knew it was coming, and I thought it wasn't very professional to just leave him hanging out there like that. At the time Boudreau's finally fired, 18, 25, and 3 was his record. Tocchet comes in. It is an easier schedule, the one that Tocchet was coaching them through. And Tocchet's record, 20-12-4, was encouraging, but again, you knew that they were playing a lot of the lesser teams in the NHL. They went through that really brutal road trip on the East Coast first, and then they fired Boudreau. So, and the weird thing was, before they went out on that road trip, we knew he was gone. We knew that was coming. The Rick Tocchet rumors were everywhere. Everybody knew Tocchet was coming in to coach the Vancouver Canucks. Even Boudreau, who had plane tickets out of Vancouver, bought on for the day that they actually fired him. He knew it was coming. Everybody knew it was coming. But under Tocchet this year, really strong run, 50-23-9 record, 109 points. They lose in the second round against Edmonton in 7. And you could see the frustration for Tocchet at points during the playoffs, which tells me there's going to be changes next season. And with the amount of expiring contracts, they can absolutely make changes. They can change the blue line. They can make some changes up front. I think the goaltending's going to stay largely the same. I think we'll see Demko and Shelovs as the goaltending tandem next year, and we'll see how that goes. But JT Miller had an absolutely fantastic year. 81 games, 37 goals, 66 assists, 103 points. He is a heart and soul player. The guy's a winner, and he's one of the most competitive players the Canucks have ever had. I've never wavered on JT Miller. I was happy when they re-signed him. Go back and watch the video. While everybody said this is a terrible contract, the Canucks are going to regret it. He's overrated, and he's their best player. Quinn Hughes, 82 games played. I've got 87 up there for him. I think he could play an 87-game schedule. But since this is the fourth take of this video, I'm just going to change that to an 82. 17 goals, 75 assists, 92 points for Quinn Hughes. And he may very well have a Norris Trophy to his name. Now, the defeatists amongst us will say, well, Hughes is going to leave at the end of his contract, which I think is 2027. My answer to that is, if the Canucks are a winning team and if they can sustain this, and that's always been a challenge for Vancouver. Creating a good team has been a challenge, but staying at the top or near the top has been virtually impossible for the Canucks over their existence. So keeping Hughes, keeping Miller, and Pettersson, and I'm going to defend Pettersson a bit here. 82 games, 34 goals, 55 assists, 89 points. No, I don't think Pettersson had a great playoffs. The thing is, there's a lot of players who've had rough playoffs. For whatever reason, it feels like if it's a Swedish player that has a rough playoffs, there's more criticism that's thrown their way. And it's just something I've noticed over the years. There's more criticism that gets thrown at a European player who doesn't have a great playoff. Podkolzin and McWard are the only two players 22 and younger who are skaters who played for this team. Shelovs is technically 22 as well. But Podkolzin, 19 games and 2 assists. I think Podkolzin's done a good job of reinventing himself a bit. He's a good bottom six forward. He throws hits. I do think there's more offense than the 2 assists would tell you. And so while Podkolzin may never live up to his advanced billing, I do think he should be a regular in the roster next year. McWard got into one game, didn't have a point. The upside for McWard is it's debatable, but this is a team that still, a lot of its core players are still in their 20s. So there's no real panic about, how many good young players are coming up for Vancouver. Goaltending, it is Thatcher Demko's net. He finished 35-14-2 with a .918 save percentage. Casey DeSmith, 12-9-6, .895 save percentage. Shelov's had a good record, 3-0-1 during the regular season and .881 save percentage. One of those 3 wins was a game that I went to. And yeah, he's a good goaltender. I don't know how else to put it. He's a good goaltender, and so DeSmith probably on his way out the door. He'll sign somewhere. DeSmith's a decent backup. But yeah, Demko and Shelovs are going to be the goaltenders going forward. Now, Philip Hronek's going to get talked about a lot over the next month or so. He turns 27 in November, and so I think he's going to be looking for a 7 or 8 year contract. Personally and honestly, I don't know that I would be offering him up the kind of money it's going to take to keep him in Vancouver if I was Patrick Alleyne. In October and November, he was excellent. 24 games, 2 goals, 21 assists, 23 points. He was a plus 12 over that period as well. From February through April, 32 games in the regular season, 2 goals, 10 assists, 12 points, and an even in the plus-minus department. As great as he was to start the season, he was average to iffy at points towards the end of the season, and he had a rough playoffs. He did get a goal, right, against Edmonton, but when you look at his numbers, I don't think it justifies the amount of money or term he's going to be looking for. And so he could be an excellent trade piece for Vancouver. And I do trust Patrick Alvin if he decides to make a move. His trades have generally worked out. Which brings us over to the pending UFAs. Bluger. I don't know if they're going to keep him or not. I think he was good. He did have a hard time putting the puck in the back of the net, though. Joshua, you got to keep Joshua. Joshua is going to be expansive. And I say that because he does a little bit of everything. He's got some power forward credentials. If he actually goes to market, if he doesn't sign an extension with Vancouver, he's going to get a pretty good contract from somebody. Sam Lafferty, who of course fourth liner. If he leaves, thanks for your service kind of thing. But I think he is a replaceable piece in the bottom six. Elias Lindholm made an argument during the playoffs for staying in Vancouver. And again, I trust the general manager and what he does here. So we'll see if they do make that attempt and how that looks. Ian Cole, I think a lot of Canuck fans are going to want Cole to be, gone. I think on the third pairing, Cole's still fine. But again, we'll see how much his contract is worth this summer. Friedman, depth defenseman, probably gone. Tyler Myers, I get the feeling he may stay. Obviously, his cap hit won't be $6 million anymore. It'll drop substantially. But at half that cost, or maybe a little less than half that cost, if it's like $2.5 or $3 million, I think Myers is fine. Zadorov really endeared himself to Canuck fans. We'll see how negotiations go. But I do think that Zadorov staying is important. And I think that Zadorov's play has made it so that a lot of Canuck fans would be better with Hronek being maybe on his way out. But we'll see. DeSmith, again, he's likely gone. Dries, I've loved Sheldon Dries in Abbotsford. I'd like to see Vancouver hold on to him. Irwin was in Abbotsford almost all season. I know he got called up. I don't think he played a game for the Canucks this year. And then pending RFAs, the previously mentioned Hronek, Shilovs is an RFA. I don't think he's going to get a huge raise. I think he'll be in the $1 million range, probably a 2-year contract. And then Linus Karlsson, who got called up, and I didn't think he looked out of place. I thought he played well, good bottom six role. At times during this playoff run, sometimes the hardest workers were the players that they'd called up from Abbotsford, which is both a compliment to what's going on in Abbotsford and kind of a bit of a criticism of the Vancouver Canucks that were playing for the parent club before that. But at any rate, the cap space on July the 1st, $23,778,333. I don't think you have to spend right up until the cap limit, but I think the Canucks will because it's kind of their MO. And again, if they decide to keep Hronek and if they try to keep Lindholm, that's going to spend a ton of that cap space. We'll see what Lindholm's looking for in terms of contract. Now, due in 2025, Brock Besser, whose contract was seen as being too expensive, now that he's had a 40-goal season, it's going to be seen as a bargain. I don't know if the Besser trade talks will pick up again because he's on an expiring contract, but we'll see. And Pia Suter, who I think was good for them at times this season. Up and down. There were a lot of Canucks that had up and down seasons, but I think keeping Suter might be the right move. Mikheyev, it feels like, might be on his way out. $4.75 million cap hit for 2 more seasons. I like Mikheyev. The effort is there, just the finish is not. He gets lots of chances. They just don't go in the net for him. And in some cases, it's bad luck. But when it's just bad luck all the time, we'll see what the team does and how they adjust for next season. But Mikheyev's almost $5 million cap hit. If they could move that, I think they do. So they don't have a first or second round pick this year. So if you're a Canuck fan, you probably don't have to worry about the draft so much. They don't have a third round pick in 2025 or 2026. I would not be surprised to see them ship their 2025 first round draft pick this summer in the event that they decide to be really kind of aggressive about creating cap space or, building themselves up to get further into that contenders conversation. Because when we were looking at the odds around the playoffs, Canuck fans kept feeling like they were being disrespected because they were usually the longest odds for the Stanley Cup. But I get it. I get it. I understand why. I'm not saying that it was necessarily something I agreed with, but I totally get why they had long odds. So, again, Patrick Alvin, the GM, Rick Tocchet, the coach. I don't think there's any danger to either of their jobs. But a lot of discussion last night of, the Canucks, they have too many Swedes. Too many Swedes. This is what happens. It's what happens when you build around Swedes. Which part of Sweden is the United States in? Because there's more American-born players than Canadian. And what's weird is that I kind of understand the whole, well, they're not really Canada's team because they've got all these players that aren't Canadians on it. We never heard that about Vegas last year. I never saw anybody in the U.S. say, well, not really a Stanley Cup win for the U.S. because there's so many Vegas players that are Canadian. And I didn't see a lot of Canadian hockey fans out in the streets dancing because all these Canadians won a Stanley Cup in Las Vegas. So it's a weird argument to make. Like, I'm not sure I really totally understand it. That, oh, well, we want Canadian players to win it on a Canadian team. If Canadian players win it on an American team, then clearly, well, they're still an American team. But if American players win a Stanley Cup on a Canadian team, is it really a Canadian Stanley Cup? Yes. So, the U.S.-born players, you have Demko, absolutely fantastic. He's been in Vancouver a long time. DeSmith, expiring contract for him. He's been good as a backup. Cole, Quinn Hughes. I don't think anybody regrets drafting Quinn Hughes. How about Brock Besser, the 40-goal scorer? Connor Garland, the heart and soul of the team up front. JT Miller, the emotional leader of the team. Captain and everything but name only. Oh, yeah, and the captain, Quinn Hughes. Anyways, and Sam Lafferty. Lafferty, pretty good for them as a fourth liner. Canadian-born, you got Susie, Myers, Jules, and DiGiuseppe. And the Swedes that they're apparently building around, and it's all Swedes. You've got Lindholm, who may very well have just been a rental this year. Pettersson, who, yes, he has a highly priced contract, but he had 89 points this year and 102 last year. Höglander, who has spent time in Abbotsford, got his break this year and was one of the heart and soul guys. He works really hard. Like, Höglander's one of those guys that we might have said back in the day, make him an honorary Canadian because of the work ethic and because he has no fear out there. Höglander and Garland play a very similar game. Karlsson, Linus Karlsson, who got into a total of 4 games with the Vancouver Canucks during the regular season. And Oman. And Oman, I think, plays really well, too. So, I don't understand the idea that, well, the Canucks, they need more Canadians. Well, so are we trading Hughes and Demko and Besser and Garland? Because I'm telling you, Canuck fans wouldn't be happy right now if the Canucks said, you know what, we're going to move Demko and Hughes and Miller. They're all Americans, so we figure we can... No. And since these players have been willing to sign long-term contracts in Vancouver, apparently they like it here. So, honorary Canadians it is. Now, on the way, the Canucks don't have, like, a huge, deep pool of prospects. But Jonathan Lekkerimäki, I'm kind of interested to see how he does at the NHL level because there's been so much speculation about him. Tom Willander, defenseman, they drafted in the first round last year. Last year's draft, of course, stacked. Believe he's playing in the NCAA right now, and we'll see whether or not Willander comes in and plays for them, say, next spring. And Elias Pettersson, the other Elias Pettersson, or Elias Pettersson, the second forward, or the defenseman, second player named Pettersson, first defenseman named Elias Pettersson. It should be interesting if he gets into the lineup as well. He's a defensive defenseman, may have a little bit more offense than what was expected when he was drafted, but yeah, he does have a chance of pushing his way onto the roster, potentially, anyways. But I do think the future's pretty bright for the Vancouver Canucks because they're in the right hands. They've got the right coach, they've got the right GM, and what they need to do now is sit down and figure out what works and what doesn't, and how the team's going to look next year. Because with the amount of cap space they have, especially if they can move Mikheyev's cap space, if they can, or cap money, if they can move his contract, right? There's a lot of money there, and they should be able to, at the very least, reformulate the blue line a little bit, which definitely I think needs to be done. And maybe figure out some more of the bottom 6, whether it's bringing guys in from Abbotsford on the cheap, or, going out and finding some free agents. But we'll see what they do. Should be interesting. Because I feel like there's more optimism around this team than there was in 2020. This feels a little more sustainable than it did in 2020. And so, yeah, I'm kind of, I'm mildly optimistic again about the Vancouver Canucks and their future. They should still be a playoff team next year. I don't know if they win the division. But if they can stay in the 100-point range, that'd be great. And if they can show some ability to stay amongst the top teams in the league, that'd be great as well. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you've not done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.